The Atari Network's ever-growing library of consoles continues to expand, this time with the Atari XEGS, or XE Game System. But why get it now, especially at a time where, to be honest, my money is tighter than ever? Well, first off, my finances are none of your business, thank you. But secondly, it was at a decent price in my opinion. Like, I found it for maybe less than half of what it seemed to be going for elsewhere. Now, it didn't come with a keyboard, and that's an issue for reasons I'll get into here in a minute. But it works, and I was able to get a flash cart for it at a good price too, effectively giving the channel access to the whole library of XEGS releases, along with 400 and 800 computer classics. So let's discuss the XEGS a bit, talk about why you might want one, and get into some of the pitfalls and benefits you might encounter as I did. So let's do it to it. But first, I'd like to ask you to please subscribe and leave a like if you enjoyed the content. It helps out the channel so much more than you'd ever know. And if my content is bringing you enjoyment, consider supporting me on Patreon. We have $2 and $5 tiers. Link is in the description. Alright, let's get on with it. So I held a grudge against the XEGS for, well, most of my life. It was released in late 1987, and therefore took valuable resources and attention away from my beloved Atari 7800. Atari at the time was trying to push a small compact model of the 2600 called the Atari 2600 Junior, and they were also trying to sell the Atari 7800 that they had inherited from Warner and GCC. And on top of that, they released a game console version of their popular 8-bit line of computers. Atari was just stretched too thin in the video game market, especially considering that they didn't seem all that concerned with putting out software. I blamed the lack of new games and the lack of attention on the 7800 on the XE Game System. But deep down, I was always a little curious about it. And now that I have one, I have to say that this thing is, well, it's pretty cool. The design makes it look like a child's toy to me. Like one of those old VTech toys from the 90s. The triangular edges on the base and the pastel color of the buttons don't help the situation much. But originally, this package, well, it came with a ton of stuff. It was certainly a value at its original MSRP of $159.99, since it came with a console, a one-button joystick, keyboard, no less than 2 cartridges in Bug Hunt and Flight Simulator 2, a light gun, all the required cords, and of course, Missile Command built right into the ROM. They don't sell video game systems like they used to. It was magical getting all this stuff in one box back in the 80s and 90s. Now mine didn't come with the box or anything like that. It was just the console, 2 joysticks, the cords, and one-on-one basketball. I figured I could find some USB adapter solution for the keyboard, and I should have done some more research, because that's not the case. At least not easily. This makes these keyboards a must if you want to play XEGS games, as they are essentially 8-bit computer games. Well, not essentially, that's actually exactly what they are. I found the keyboards listed on eBay for anywhere between $80 to $100, plus shipping. Ouch. That makes my console less of a deal. So keep that in mind when shopping for one of these things. Most XEGS games were re-releases of the old 8-bit software, but they came in good-looking blue boxes with a sort of grid overlaid over it. The center of the box has the game art, and above that is a really cool Atari XE logo. I think the boxes look great, but the cartridges, on the other hand, well, they're really just small rectangles. I mean, there's nothing wrong with them, don't get me wrong, but it's just as basic gets. Makes sense though, as the Atari 8-bit software, the ones on cartridge at least, look similar to the XEGS ones. And they had to for backwards compatibility. And since they wanted everything to be backwards compatible, well, they didn't have a choice. The XEGS is also compatible with all Atari 8-bit peripherals, so you can add disk drives and such down the road. Now, one warning I remember reading was in the power supplies. I think that most of them will work fine, but you'll want to check out this thread over on AtariAge, just to be safe, and I'll have it linked in the description. I bring this up because tons of people fried their Jaguars by attempting to use Sega or Nintendo power supplies that have improper polarity. The point is, if you get a unit without the proprietary power supply, just do some research before jamming one into the console. And that should be a rule of thumb with any console, really. Approximately 100,000 of these things were sold, and they're getting pretty rare. The last thing we need is to lose more of these XE game systems, as I'm sure untold numbers of them have been thrown out already or just recycled. Such a tragedy. Plugging the cords into my XEGS was an experience all its own. At first I thought it didn't work because the RCA wires needed pushed in a lot further than I felt comfortable in doing. But after some effort, well, they went into place and the picture appeared on my TV. I was playing one-on-one basketball, one of my favorite Atari 7800 games, on my brand new Atari XE Game System. And the game looked and played, well, dare I say good? Yes, I dare, because it does. For the age of the hardware within this console, these games look pretty good. I'll throw up some side-by-side comparisons so you can make your own judgment on how the console compares to its competition of the time, or compared to what Atari themselves were releasing elsewhere. I'm incredibly excited to play games like Karateka, or Karateka, which is far superior to the god-awful 7800 version. Blue Max is a game that I've been curious about for years now, along with Necromancer, a gem that I've always wanted to play since I've read about it in the Atarian magazine. There's also games like Crime Buster, Archon, and Rescue on Fractalus that I want to enjoy. Now there was 32 XEGS releases, but counting all the Atari 8-bit software that's compatible with this thing, there's potentially thousands of games to play. And that brings me to the biggest problem with Atari Corp, in my opinion. They relied too heavily on backwards compatibility to round out the libraries of their consoles, and make the claim that they had more games than the competition. But today, as with essentially every Atari platform and console, there are tons of new homebrew games being worked on, or games that were made available to the XEGS. Castle Crisis and Beef Drop are available elsewhere, yes, but I'm curious to play them for the XEGS, for comparison's sake. Some madman ported Space Harrier to the Atari 8-bits, and I'm hoping it'll run on the XEGS.
Welcome to the fantasy zone. Get ready!
Demo's Dungeon looks cute and right up my alley, while Stunt Car Racer is something I wouldn't normally play, but after looking into XEGS Homebrew and Atari 8-bit Homebrew, well, now I'm curious about it. There's a vast history of homebrew and independent games that I now have access to, and tackling the Atari 8-bit computer line as a complete newbie, well, it's one of the most intimidating things that an Atarian can do, in my opinion. The Atari Network has expanded quite a bit over the last few weeks. I know I could have got a ton of views by focusing on more popular things. I'm approaching 200 videos when counting the shorts and live streams, and I have a good sample size of what works and what doesn't on the channel. I don't think the Atari 8-bit stuff is going to be extraordinarily popular, but I really don't care. I want to cover as much of Atari's history, its past, its present, and future as I possibly can. When I started the Atari Network, that was my goal. So, I'm looking forward to some XEGS and Atari computer reviews on the channel, along with the links I got recently and all the other stuff we've already been covering. But I want to know from you guys, what's the first XEGS or Atari 8-bit game we should cover, and why? What homebrew game should I get? What's the definitive game of the XEGS library? And have you or do you own an Atari XEGS? What should I know moving forward in this journey with the console? Let me know all the answers to these and more in the comments down below. I'd also like to take this moment to thank the following classy Atarians for supporting me via YouTube memberships and on my Patreon. Thanks to their support, the Atari Network is growing and going strong. So thank you to My Own Celestial, OG Hugo, Head Trauma Bob, Jolt 7800, Ball Gobbler, Socrates 63, Fens the Spook, Mr. Shua TV, Jeremiah Thomas, Huge 79, Braylon, and DF. You guys rock, and I couldn't do this without you. And with that, we've come to the end of yet another video on the Atari Network. I hope you guys enjoyed our first look at the Atari 8-bits, and specifically the Atari XE Game System on the channel here. Here's to a lot more in the future. I've been the 7800 Pro Gamer, and I want to remind you all to stay classy, Atarians.